my friends, this is Rick, and this is Your Seat at the Table, and we are looking at the Grey Death Legion decision at Thunder Rip. In reality, what I want to talk about is the idea of creating small intro level mech units and characters for your Battletech universe for playing in the role playing game, for tabletop, and a great example of that would be Grayson Death Carlisle and his command. And the formation and how it comes about in existence is worthy of a video unto itself. The early life of Grayson Carlisle. He was born the son of a Captain Durant Carlisle, the commanding officer of Carlisle's Commandos, a mercenary unit in the employ of the House Steiner. Therefore, throughout his whole youth, he was groomed to take his father's position someday. At the age of 10, he formally joined the unit as a mech warrior apprentice. Shortly after the death of his mother, the Commandos were sent on garrison duty to Trail 1 in 3019. Grayson's life would change abruptly when in 3024, when a mysterious bandit force attacked the Commandos, shattering them and drove the survivors off planet. As the only member of his unit left on the planet, Grayson's only thought was to take revenge for his father's treacherous death by the bandit leader's marauder. His astonishing success against several light battle mechs while he was on foot deeply impressed the planetary militia and the government. Thereafter, which offered him a job to set up a mech force as defense against the bandits. Carlisle started with the recruitment of an enemy warrior who was taken prisoner during an attack called Laurie Kalmar for his new Trail 1 Lancers. Under Grayson's skilled command, the Lancers managed to achieve additional victories and finally uncovered the invader's identity as a special force of Duke Hassad Reichel of the Draconis Combine. Reichel's intention was to arrive with a second force and rescue Trail 1's population from the bandits to secure a safe haven for further incursions into the Lurin Commonwealth. This discovery instilled in Grayson a great sense of hate for the Combine. At first, the situation got even worse when Reichel arrived with a company of heavy battle mechs, and the Trail government was overthrown by Combine collaborators. Finally, the Lancers managed to inform the Commonwealth by hijacking a jump ship, and after Reichel was unable to destroy Carlisle's forces in a final battle, the Duke was forced to withdraw his troops off planet. Grayson, on the other hand, had to learn that his desire for revenge could be dangerous, especially for his relationships with Laurie and when he was fighting against his father's murderers instead of rushing to her rescue. Though he was not able to kill Reichel, the pilot of the Marauder, Grayson's desire was stilled for the moment, and he left the world with the remains of the Lancers that swore allegiance to him to create a new mercenary unit, the Grey Death Legion. So, at the end of what we're looking at is the idea of a backstory, kind of a tragic backstory for a particular character. So, the idea is you're as an example. There's a couple of important, interesting characters in the Grey Death Saga's beginnings. There's a sergeant named Ramage who specializes in close combat, close assault for taking down mechs, which is considered nearly impossible by most tacticians. That infantry, poor bloody infantry, their PBIs as they are likely to be referred to, have no chance against the might of a light mech, and which isn't necessarily true. The chances of getting decimated are pretty high. That is true, but for a determined and a well-equipped or even a poorly equipped but determined and experienced group of infantry can take on a mech and disable it, if not completely take it out of the picture or capture the pilot. Grayson himself, so he started out as a young man as an apprentice, and then when he gets to about 20, this series of events takes place on Trail 1 and sees the death of his father. Now, his father's command would have been considered, it's referenced to being sometimes a regiment and sometimes a battalion, but in reality it's just a reinforced company and a mixed armed company at that. So at the heart of the mixed company is a 4-mech lance of medium and light mechs, and then it's supported by a platoon, maybe 2 platoons of infantry, some on foot, some with light vehicles, light armored combat vehicles, and then a technical support unit. So at the end of the at the beginning. So if you look at from a character perspective, from a player perspective, starting out small, because playing in Battletech can be daunting by the sheer size and numbers. There are huge amounts of large scale units and large scale combats and campaigns, but for the individual players for the small group, there's a lot of plenty of opportunities to participate and achieve reasonable goals. So, in the case, for example, being is Grayson finds himself, uh, his family's dead, his father's units decimated, and he's turned into a fugitive who has considerable amount of skill. Uh, he spent 10 years of his life learning to pilot mechs and simulators and actual mechs. He learned a lot of tactics and personal. He learned some martial arts and some personal combat skills and leadership skills. Everything needed to be the leader of a command unit of some sort. And so he's able to turn this stuff into his advantage, starting with beginning small and capturing Lori Kalmar and her locust, which gives him his access to his first mech. It also impresses the locals who are in rebellion against, technically, they're just in rebellion against their own government because this is not House Karita space. This is House Steiner space, but it's literally on the fringe. It's so close to the periphery, it might as well be periphery as far as Sarkat and the high command of the Steiners are concerned. So supposedly some sort of plot was created, and they were bringing in reinforcements to take over the commando's duties and relieve them. And this force was coming from a quote bandit king, Oberon Hendricks. And this is where Lori Kalmar is recruited and several other would-be quote pirate bandit mech warriors at the beginning, and they don't know that they're being used as pawns, and it's uncovered slowly through the story in the book. And over the time, Grayson as a character is able to develop and grow and expand, and he's able to add a handful of key individuals. Um, Lori Kalmar being the first of the such, and then Sergeant Ramage, and then Renfred Tor, who is a merchant captain who owns his own jump ship and two commercial Union class type cargo vessels, not Union armored Union mech transports, but cargo versions of the Union ship, and finds himself in a series of situations that almost loses his ship and his crew and so on and so forth. And he teams up with Grayson to achieve what would be considered nearly impossible, but not improbable. So, as a story backstory, as a beginning, this is a great way to start. Your pilot, your characters are pretty much nobodies, or are literally operating on the fringes, perhaps even in the periphery, and they begin to develop a name for themselves. And through dumb luck and hard work and uh, taking some horribly dangerous chances, they're able to succeed against an implacable foe. And in the case of the foe or the campaign, the local planetary leadership is in flux. The House Karita agent sent his work. He is a warlord, if you will, of Duke Reichel. Duke Reichel himself is a big baddie, but he's an aloof one. He gets involved briefly and then moves on. But it carries over into later stories in the series where we see the development of both the characters and the unit itself, and this growth from nothing to a very prominent, very capable command and mercenary unit within the inner sphere. So if we look at it from that perspective, as a player, as a GM, this is a great way to begin. See, other ways, of course, there's numerous ways. You could be a factionist Comstar. You could, if you're coming in later, you could be part of the clans, or you could be any one of the major minor houses, or a house within the house, because every major house has its own divisions. I'm not going to try to break that down or get that into that now, but it's a neo-feudal state. The more or less the governments of the inner sphere rule by fiat and rule and law, where local people, usually chosen representatives or handpicked people, men and women, answer to the quote prince or the house board of whichever house, depending on how the system is set up. And so you have this multi-layer option of opportunities for in becoming involved. And there's areas within the inner sphere that are always in flux. They're always dangerous. They're always quote fringe. And there are places further out in the periphery that also are fringe. So you do not have to be wedded to one of these major players or power brokers to have a great way of adding and enjoying the game system and playing it in a traditional role playing style. It's just a great thing. So in that conclusion, one of those things, like I said, creating your characters' concept, trying to decide how they're going to, what faction they're going to be part of, if a faction, are they going to be pure mercenaries? Are we talking, mercenaries or part of house forces or special forces, or there's plenty of merchant clans, corporations, and secondary family members of house lords who have their own uh, machinisms and plots and conspiracies. You got, like I said, Comstar and Lord Blake and a numerous set of other non-house entities that could be involved in a private security force. Uh, Most common, in my experience, players choose to play as mercenaries. This gives them opportunities to move around the inner sphere to become involved with things on a larger scale, but in a minute control. So the characters, for example, the Great F Legion, Carlisle and or Grayson and his friends and associates, uh, eventually become some very key moments within the development of the bigger picture. By book 3 in the series, they find themselves at the the pointed end of a deadly conspiracy to make them look like bandits and make them look bad. It's a cover up to get access to the planet hold that was granted to them while they're serving their contract with House Merrick. So they've been betrayed and duped and worse. And there's this conspiracy within a conspiracy involved that eventually they uncover something called the Starleague Memory Core, which is basically a digital library of a lot of lost Starleague technology. This is an extremely vital find for a number of reasons. And there's factions who do not want this find discovered or propagated. They do not want the copies of this thing sent out to the great houses because they want the houses to stay at the barbarian the teetering point of complete failure of technology in society, and others who see the vital option or opportunities this offers to see a revitalization, a rebirth of a lot of lost tech, and because a very important thing, because a decade later when the clans invade, the houses are the key houses are already in a forward progression mode of building upon the information found by the inside the Helm memory core, and because of the actions of the Great Death, this may have allowed the inner sphere to at least have a fighting chance against the clans when the clans first arrive, and then it goes from there. So awesome stuff. And if you ever get a chance to read this series, it's a great series. In a nutshell, this is BattleTech. If you read the Great Death, because there's better part of 100 or better novels that were created for the system and afterwards, and they're all good novels. But some of the key ones, and this particular one, this is a series. I also have the third one, which I'm currently reading in the bedroom on the table. And then later, we skip a generation or we advance a generation. So a gap of 20 years occurs. We get closer to the clan invasion and stuff. And Lorian and Grayson's son, Alexander, finds himself following in his father's footsteps in some aspects. And there's a set of books that follow that adventure too. So, but There you got it. And I will be doing a separate video specifically on these guys. So when the opportunity comes, we will do that. Until next time, this is Rick, and I hope you have a great weekend.